Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. My name is Crown and today we are going to have some more stories that I hope that you will enjoy. But before we start, it will be so much appreciated if you would subscribe to the channel, like the video if you enjoyed it, and maybe leave a comment down below. These simple clicks would mean a lot to the future of this channel and really reward the effort that I put in every day. And now, without further ado, let's go! First story. I planted over 5,000 dandelion weeds in my neighbor's garden. Here's some backstory. I have a 4-year-old Cocker Spaniel named Charlie, and he likes to poop. I let him out in my front garden every morning for his toilet routine. Same in the evening. We don't have a boundary fence on where my garden and my neighbor start beside a row of bushes, saying that Charlie hasn't ever crossed/pooped past these bushes. Now every week I collect said poop before it gets into a disturbing amount. I've been doing this for the past 4 years to keep my front garden looking good and not smelly. One day I came home from work to find that my neighbors weren't happy that there was dog poop in my front garden. Instantly went to collect up what was there. And there wasn't much, and it was nowhere near the boundary of where our gardens met. Fast forward a week, and my neighbor again complained about the dog poop being in my garden. However, this time threatened to hurt my dog if he continued to poop in my garden. And this time I wasn't so nice about it. I stated that it's my garden and my dog can do as he pleases. Now I know dog poop can be annoying, but when it's not in your garden and there is no smell due to decent airflow and open front garden, is it really justified to threaten a man's dog over some poop? Anyway, after months of this going with petty things and shade being thrown at me every day about having a dog, I decided to declare war on my neighbors. Now I knew these people pretty well. They had just moved in and we let them use our Wi-Fi for a couple of months until they got theirs sorted. I picked up a few things about them and one of them was how OCD they were. They cut their back garden every week and painted the entire bottom layer of the house to match their fence. This was all the fuel I needed to exact my revenge. My first step was to start off small. I knew they liked things to match, so I painted my fence gate bright pink instead of matching it with my fence. This was my first small victory. They hated it so much they begged me to correct the color. So I did. I figured if peace was an option, it was worthwhile. Then began the hate again. I had to come up with something so evil and yet genius that couldn't be traced back to me. And this is when I planted over 5,000 dandelion seeds in their front and back garden. I figured I was in this for the long game. I did this under the cover of night and made sure to plant them in the places not easily mowed. Fast forward 3 months and their garden was covered in weeds. They grew through all the slapping and were patched all over the garden. It took them over 3 days to clear the weeds and around 100 pounds of weed killer. Edit. I see a lot of people commenting on leaving dog poop in my garden. Firstly, he's a Cocker Spaniel. He isn't taking colossal poop. It's also a fairly big garden. There aren't huge piles everywhere. Dogs tend to spread it out to mark territory. You'd physically have to search for it to find it. Regards to not picking it up instantly unlike some, when my dog needs to go, he's going to go. Usually he has a final go before bedtime around 11 p.m. Another edit. And comments being made about my dog's lifestyle are completely false. Charlie is a trained gun dog, not some common house pet. He comes shooting and camping with me every weekend. In regards to walks, he gets one early morning and a run in the evening. He's a very well-trained dog. Next story. Destroy my clothes? Enjoy your time in jail. So this happened when I was 14 or 15. My mother was married to a man who had an adult son from a previous marriage. I think he was mid-20s. He lived the happy life, literally on the streets by choice, and about once a year or so, he would hitchhike his way to our house with his friends. do copious amounts of laundry and weed, and generally just take over as if it was their house. They even left the gas burner on once because they forgot they turned the stove on. Anyhow, like any teenage girl, I was obsessed with my clothes. I had laundry sitting in the dryer, including these awesome corduroy pants I had only worn once. Stepbro and friends are doing laundry, and instead of doing something normal like moving my stuff aside or putting it in my room, they decided, oh man, it would be so dope to cut these up and make like a sweet cape. So that's what they did. I saw Stepbro wearing this cape and recognized the material. Are those my pants? I exclaimed. They were in the laundry, man, you know, like finders keepers. I was furious, and his dad wouldn't do anything about it. My mom was pissed because she had just brought these for me, and they were pricey. Mom did not like this annual visit anyhow, but to keep her marriage she put up with it. I wanted to get back at Stepbro, but he had nothing of value because of his lifestyle. Then I remembered I overheard my parents fighting and my mom had mentioned Stepbro had got a girl pregnant. And the kid was like 2 years old and he hadn't so much as given the girl a penny or even seen the child since it was born. So the next day, my parents were at work. My stepbro was hanging out listening to music or something, so I decided to call the cops. I was not sure what to say, but I told the dispatcher I knew of someone who might have a warrant out for failure to pay child support. Now, before you say how would a teenager know about that, well, my purse father is a demon. I was at one point nearly arrested for that same offense. The dispatcher asked the name of the person and I gleefully gave stepbro's name, and they confirmed there was in fact a warrant out for him. I gave my address and waited. 20 minutes later, cops roll up. They knock and I let them in. I lead them right to him. He's right here, officers. I couldn't stop smiling. They cuff him and take him off to jail. An hour later, my mom called the house after stepbro had used his phone call to call his dad, and I told her exactly what I did. She whispered, "Good job," but then pretended to loudly reprimand me as she was with stepdad. Stepdad couldn't get the fine and bail money together fast enough, so stepbro had to sit in jail overnight. Still makes me happy 20 years later to remember seeing him being taken away in a cop car. My mom luckily divorced that jerk and is now married to a very nice man. Added to note that 20 years ago, the cops did tell you if someone had a warrant of that nature. Someone else pointed out that this is child support, so it's national. I don't know how the laws are now in terms of privacy. Next story. Buddy, you picked the wrong person to harass. The year was 2014 or maybe 2013, and I was a freshman in high school. On a general basis, it sucked. I mean, it was an American public high school with literally thousands of kids. It's given that's gonna blow some major balls. One thing in particular that made it extra sucky though was gym class. Specifically, this one guy in gym class. This dude's name was Jack A. McGee. He was a jerk. At first, it was pretty standard high school guy in gym class level of obnoxious guy. You know the type, overly loud, unreasonably aggressive during games, bossy, tossing the collective brain cell back and forth between his two equally ape-like buddies. The usual. I don't know when exactly it happened, but he developed a sort of eye for me. After the first couple of weeks or so, he started asking me bizarre questions that I now believe may have been some sort of innuendo. Sitting uncomfortably close to me, resting his hand on my gym shoe. General creepy behavior. He once blocked a doorway with his body. This dude was massive, forcing me to literally squeeze my way through and crawl over him. He then tried to grab me and pin me to him once I was almost through, but I'm very good at dodging physical contact whenever possible, and dipped on him before his giant gorilla arm could catch me. I still shudder thinking about it. I cannot emphasize enough how terrible this dude smelled. But the true breaking point came during the peak cruelty of this school-mandated sadism. Gym swim. Before anyone asks, let it be known that yes, I did try to tell someone about this. I told my gym teacher first semester, really early on, that Jack was making me incredibly uncomfortable. The gym teacher waved it off, saying he was just playing around, and that it's probably because he likes you. His suggestion was basically to just put up with it and wait it out, because he was sure Jack would lose interest soon anyways. Spoiler alert, he didn't. Second semester rolls around, and the 4-week period of gym swim descends upon us like the bloated carcass of a catapulted whale, crushing us beneath its wet, foul-smelling body. 40-some-odd adolescents forced into a cold, orally chlorinated pool for 50-plus minutes, adorned in swimsuits determined to crawl up into our butts like Ant-Man himself. Basically, it was hell on earth. As I've mentioned in a previous post, I'm autistic, so the echoing sounds reflected fluorescent lights, pungent odors, slimy floors, and assorted nonsense made the situation even worse for me. I wasn't officially diagnosed yet, so my complaints were written off as me being whiny, and I was told to shut up and deal with it. So I did. I think I had more meltdowns in that 4-week span than I've had in the past 2 years combined, but whatever. On top of the sensory overload, there was Jack. He made frequent attempts to grab me, trying to hold me against my will, which was disgusting, and I spent most of the class trying to evade him. While all of this was happening, my new gym teacher, they switched every semester, was busy trying to keep a couple of the other guys from drowning each other. She was one adult forced to watch over 40 rowdy kids in a swimming pool. She was a bit preoccupied. The final straw came one Wednesday afternoon. The event that finally pushed me off the edge of the rationality I've been clinging to and sent me plummeting into full-on bloodthirst. There I was, battling around, minding my own business, when Jack and his 2 goons managed to corner me. I'm immediately suspicious. Hackles raised as they asked me fairly banal questions about how the pool is today and such annoying stuff. I give short, terse answers, trying to see if I could maybe slip past him. I spotted an opening and pulled for it, but Jack was apparently expecting this. As I swim through the narrow gap between him and one of his friends, he stretches his arm out and actually manages to touch me. I froze for a moment, the delighted giggling of him and his friends echoing in my ears as if from 1,000 miles away. The next thing I knew, I was out of the pool, being held back by the gym teacher, and Jack had a bloody nose. He was shouting angrily at me, calling me a crazy witch, as his nose gushed blood into the water. There was mass confusion among the class. I was told to change quickly and sit in the hallway. Apparently, the gym teacher had heard me screech like a banshee, followed by a number of shouts, and had looked over to see me wrestle out of Jack's grip, jump on his back, and throw him off balance enough to smash his head into the edge of the pool wall. I remembered none of this, but I did find a few chunks of greasy brown hair clenched in my fist that I'd evidently ripped from his scalp when the teacher pulled me off. I washed my hand thoroughly. It was decided that I'd go to school early tomorrow to have a little talk with the dean. They would have just sent me there straight away, but gym was my last class of the day, and the dean had already left by then for whatever reason, so it had to be postponed a little while. It was pretty heavily implied that I was going to be suspended, quite possibly even expelled for what had happened. I was furious. Not only had Jack made my life a living hell, but his horse crab was now going to be the cause of my expulsion. I wasn't about to go down without a fight, but I realized that I'd have to play this pretty smart if I wanted to weasel out of it. The next morning I did 2 things. I put on mascara and I made a superficial but rather painful incision on my right thigh, high enough so as to be covered by my shorts. Normally I hate wearing makeup because I don't like the way it feels, but I'd worn mascara before and noticed the interesting effect it had on my appearance. Specifically, I already have long and dark eyelashes, so adding mascara draws a lot of attention to my eyes and makes them look huge, like total Bambi eyes. Wide, innocent, naive, and harmless. I sat down in front of the dean at 6:40 a.m. and I didn't need to fake the fear in my expression, but I made sure to throw in something that could be interpreted as guilt too, bowing my head and twisting my face in dismay. Needless to say, the dean was pretty angry. "Do you know why you're here, young lady?" he said. "Yes," I said softly. "And you know that what you did is very serious?" "Yes," I said again, making my voice tremble. "Care to explain yourself then?" I began, my voice shaking. "I just wanted him to stop." "Stop what?" the dean prompted, his eyebrows furrowed. "I just wanted him to stop touching me," I blurted. As I said this, I reached my hand under the table where he couldn't see it and dug my finger into the cut on my leg, causing me to lurch forward as if in a sob, my other hand covering my face as my eyes watered from the pain. "What does that mean?" the dean asked, his brows now on a collision course for Mars. I spent the next several minutes divulging all the nonsense that happened to me that year, digging into my injury for some tears whenever necessary, and by the end of it, the dean looked horrified. He reaffirmed that no, I shouldn't have attacked Jack like that, but that they had to investigate the matter further. I basically got off with a slap on the wrist, and after multiple testimonies from other girls, Jack got suspended for 2 weeks. I was not satisfied. They hadn't been able to expel him due to lack of hard evidence, but I was out for blood. He returned to school 2 weeks later and I was ready. One of his friends had a little brother in my bio class, a fairly chill dude named Owen, who I had worked out a deal with. See, Jack had been very vocal about his displeasure with me to his friends, which made its way to Owen, who for the low price of bailing his dumb self out in biology was more than willing to share that information with me. I had a direct pipeline. Anything Jack shared with his friends made its way directly to me via Owen, and as it turns out, this dude did not keep a whole lot to himself. There was a lot of nonsense I was tempted to nail him for. For instance, I found out he was selling drugs, mostly Adderall and some occasional weed, from his locker, and had been cheating his way through most of his classes. However, I knew how suspicious it would look for me to report something like that so soon. It would probably just look like I had a grudge, which I did. I was trying to get even, which I was. He slipped up really bad about a week after his return, and that was when I struck. See, he hadn't been subtle about his displeasure with my retaliation, and spent most of gym class sending really ugly looks my way. That gym teacher kept us as far away from each other as possible. But he managed to track me down in a passing period one day and rant at me about how I had screwed him over and that I was a lying little witch and yada yada yada, and that he'd make me regret it. Funny, he stole the words right out of my mouth. I found out from Owen later that Jack had been bragging to his friends last night about the switchblade he'd stolen from one of those hunting stores downtown, and promised he'd show it off to them later that day. And I seized the opportunity. I took a few seconds in the bathroom mirror, scratching at the scab on my leg until my eyes were teary enough to really sell the terrified victim look, then bolted down to the dean's office stuttering and shaking, crying out for help. The front desk lady was understandably startled by the sight of a seemingly panicked freshman girl bolting into the office, and called the dean out right away. His face grew serious when he saw me. "Mr. Dean, please help! He's gonna kill me!" I cried. "Now slow down," he said. "What happened?" "Jack," I said, resisting the urge to grin maniacally at the hardness that appeared in the dean's eyes. "He cornered me in the hall. He called me a witch and said he was going to make me regret telling on him. He's got a knife." "He what?" the dean barked. Everything moved very quickly after that. The security guards were told to search the kid's locker, while a couple other security officers were called down to get Jack out of his classroom and take him to the office. I was told by the front desk lady who had heard the whole exchange to hide with her in the copier room so Jack wouldn't see me. They found the stolen knife in his backpack and the drugs in his locker. That, combined with his previous charges, was enough to get him not only expelled, but arrested. I never saw him again, which is probably a good thing because I'm still mad. I'll probably try to kill him if given the opportunity. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching and see you next time.